Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We want to thank you for joining us today as we discuss guidelines for building a SoC in healthcare. We have some great speakers today, and we are grateful they joined us to go into detail about balancing the challenges to protect and comply while remaining patient-focused in your healthcare organization. We have Matt Lepkowski, founder of Business Automation Experts, Michael Schwartz, SoC manager at Highwire Networks, and Arun Gandhi, director of product management at Seceon. We also have some Q&A panelists, Josue Vargas, Director of Security Operations at Highwire Networks, and Smit, Kadakia, co-founder and Chief Data Scientist at Seceon. Just a few items to cover before we get started. All lines will be muted. Questions can be submitted on the chat window at any time. This webinar is being recorded and will be sent via email with the slides within 3 business days. And if you have any further questions, you can email info@seceon.com. So for the agenda today, we have Matt, who will be speaking on the drivers behind cyber risk, Arun, who will be speaking on how the AI-based platform can safeguard hospitals' data and patients, and Michael, who will give us some real-world use cases. With that being said, Matt, please start us off.
Thank you, Jenna. So I have a rich history in healthcare IT. I've been doing it for a few decades now and seen a lot of changes that have occurred over those many, many years. But some things that just don't change are the fact that we have a lot of legacy applications, and that contributes to some challenges for cybersecurity because many of these applications were written back in the day when they didn't really think security was as important. So we've seen that kind of like in email, right? Originally email, nobody envisioned this idea of spamming. So there are many applications in healthcare that are still kind of around that have some of these fun features that we never knew were going to be exploited. And with the growth of the health infrastructure, so the fact that you see many of our hospitals buying other hospitals or merging or changing names and all bulking up in many ways. What we thought was a problem in data silos is even worse because you'll have 15 things that do the exact same capability, but it's specific to that one department and this one hospital that 5 doctors like to use. And with this shadow IT thing, it's definitely an interesting wrinkle because people are bringing things into the cloud. And since everything is connecting through SSL, it's kind of hidden and people can get away with stuff. And so data is moving all over the place because people are trying to make their jobs better. And while we know that our premiums keep going up, in somewhat sync, the costs are also going up. For health facilities, it costs more to hire people, costs more for insurance. The cybersecurity premium that they have to pay keeps going up as every new exploit comes out. And the growth just doesn't happen in a nice, even fashion. Therefore, we do face shrinking budgets in IT. There's a bit of expansion when there's government grants for some EMRs and things, but that's swinging the other direction. We're a very heavily regulated environment. So there are, I don't know how many government agencies, and they all will have a say in maybe one department within one hospital or one facility. And so at any given point in time, you're going to have a whole army of different government agents coming through there looking for different things. And sometimes what one wants, another one says, don't worry about. So it gets kind of challenging to balance all of those things of reporting requirements or data needs, or can we share this or can't we share that? And we have a lot of really smart people and they're dedicated in healthcare, and we tend to homegrown those capabilities. And so the cybersecurity skills are there, but they're still nascent. They haven't been battle hardened as much as maybe other industries, and people will get additional skills in the place, but they don't always have a lot of success in recruiting from outside to bring this in. Ultimately, cybersecurity is just not a strategic imperative because we go to the doctor to get better. It's about patient care. So we don't want to overemphasize the security elements to the detriment of patient care. Can you advance to the next slide, please? So the way we typically handle things is there will be regular assessments, if you will, some fire drills, some sort of thought experiments to say, well, if this happened, what would happen? You know, take something from the news and say, gee, are we able to deal with this? And you hope that none of those things really come to pass. But it is a common thing that occurs, and it has some value to help kind of educate people and think through things. High trust is something that's been around for probably another decade or two. It's really the combination of a lot of security standards. Its core is a NIST standard. And at this point, about 4 out of 5 healthcare facilities and about the same number of health insurance plans will claim a high trust certification. And that's good. It is, again, like a little bit further in the thought experiments, make sure that the policies align with actions and that various things have been thought about. And it helps simplify sort of, well, if I'm high trust, well, that implies there's certain things that should be there. Another area that people seem to be investing in is outsourcing their email. So it'll go to the Microsoft cloud, Office 365, it'll go to Google. They are saying, look, we just can't keep up with all of the things that you need to keep up with on email. And given that about 80 to 90% of the malware that usually gets you comes through email, it makes sense to try and deal with that hole that can get in there. And a lot of the basic hygiene is certainly there. Patch management, it's getting better. It's difficult because of all those legacy applications. There's some content filtering, honeypots, and something that seems to resonate is we can train people, but at best, like on phishing, this has been measured a few times. If you train people on phishing, your best bet is you get in about 90 days of protection. It sort of is linked to that outsourcing the email thing because education has a very quick diminishing return in value. Go ahead. So what's left? Unfortunately, there's a bit of a list here. So 0 days certainly can get in. They have a wide footprint, a lot of systems. Therefore, they have a huge menu of 0 days that can really get them. Data breach, I wouldn't say it isn't detected. It's just not quickly detected. So we certainly need ways to more quickly identify unusual stuff on our network. And that's pretty complicated when we have overworked resources who are trying to, 1, keep the lights on, and 2, hope that, nothing else is going on that shouldn't be going on. Vulnerability scanning, it's important. It's a challenge because healthcare is 24/7, 365. There really isn't a great period of downtime that you can just flood your network looking for vulnerabilities and trying to, generate that punch list to go back out and say, we need to, wall this thing off or do something. It's a challenge to be able to really get that in place. The bad actors, look, bad people get sick too. So you can be running a risk just because, somebody got pneumonia, comes to your facility, doesn't like how they got treated, and they happen to have some skills that are unsavory, and they'll leave some fun stuff on your network that you had no idea was going to be there. And robust recovery, we still have a lot of tape. We have other things that are going on to send stuff to Iron Mountain. When these ransomware things come out, it definitely chews into our budgets again, because many times people have to pay them because they just can't quickly get back what they just lost. There's a lot of tools out there in cybersecurity in general, and then constantly things coming at you in healthcare. And hopefully this will help you think a little bit more about how you should evaluate and think about other tools to bring into your environment. And ultimately, having a policy never equals protection. It's great to have it. You got to have it because of all the regulation and other things, but you can't just put a piece of paper in front of a bad actor and say, aha, I've got a policy that says you shouldn't do this. It doesn't work. And when stuff goes wrong, because, our focus is taking care of patients, we don't have at the call an army of people to come in and make a response. And so it's a challenge to quickly identify something and then quickly respond in kind and take intelligent steps. Compliance, again, all these policies and things imply that we should have continuous compliance and regularly looking at what's going on. And so you spend a fair amount of resources in trying to deal with compliance, and then look at how you can automate some things within compliance so that those resources can be freed up to better use their time. So with that, I'll pass it over to Arun, who will spend a little time on how Seceon is organized and what it can do.
Thanks, Matt. I think you laid out the challenges in the healthcare industry pretty well. So real-time threat detection and remediation is extremely critical, as we heard. Stopping the threats before they can cause irreparable damage to your organization. And AI SIM is a platform driven by machine learning and AI models. It is an advanced, big, fast data platform built on most scalable architectures existing today. Its dynamic and adaptive threat models and correlations bring those threats that really matter by automating analysis and eliminating the noise. The platform leverages AI to detect and then stop the threats in real time. It is a single solution that addresses wide spectrum of threats, including insider threats, ransomware, DDoS, etc. As you see, the integrated platform covers a comprehensive set of use cases and provides continuous compliance. It, however, does not replace your firewalls, gateways, antivirus, etc., but helps to enhance the hygiene of these systems. How does it work? That's a question, right? So AISIM ingests raw streaming data and flows from all devices in your ecosystem. It ingests raw logs from OS, applications, routers, switches, and cloud. Multiple engines run in parallel as the ingested data is streamed through providing fast, scalable, fault-tolerant stream processing. The Lambda architecture processes real-time and historical data. The platform produces actionable analytics at the moment of ingestion rather than days or weeks later, as we see it in some other platforms today. It facilitates real-time search and query of unstructured data. So what are the benefits here? The end customer, to the business. As we heard from Matt, that we need solutions to provide real-time analytics using integrated data from devices, health systems, payers, patients, providers, and others. AISM provides real-time view of your assets and flows in your environment. With proactive threat detection, it significantly reduces the mean time to identify the threats, surfacing the ones that really matter. The inbuilt automatic threat remediation helps to reduce the time taken to respond to a threat. So with Seceon platform, customers can respond to threats within minutes to hours, as opposed to days, weeks, or months. Typically, regulatory compliance is considered as a specific point in time, but there is a compliance drift. I think we all know that, you could be compliant on day 1, but what about day 10? Seceon helps healthcare organizations to remain compliant at all times. AISIM offers flexible deployment options, and it is possible due to its underlying Docker container-based microservices architecture. And it helps reduces the CapEx and OpEx, right? Hospitals have limited budget to pay. We heard that from Matt. Because of its geometric increase in data flows, its sheer volume of data makes it unreachable from the budget point of view. It is a comprehensive platform and eliminates the need for silo solutions. With that, I would like to pass it on to Michael.
Hi, everybody. I want to go a little more in depth into some of the problems that are facing SOC analysts and SOCs in the healthcare world today. As Matt touched on, the lack of non-IT personnel training is severely lacking. You have a lot of individuals who have to use your network and are using these extensive cloud networks with lots of holes in them, but they don't have the training to be cautious or to be persistent in their caution. After, Americans especially have a short attention span. So after you train them once, a couple weeks later, the same person may forget that they're supposed to be checking email addresses for suspicious emails and making sure they're coming from who they're supposed to be coming. This creates a real big hole in any security infrastructure due to the fact that most data breaches are caused by an unintentional or an intentional internal bad actor. They have patching or equipment that's no longer being patched or supported by the manufacturers. And whenever you run into a situation like that, you keep an open door for attackers. It's literally just sitting there. It's no longer getting support. They're not stopping any new viruses from coming in. So whenever a system, be it healthcare or industry or anything like that, is utilizing outdated equipment, they're not getting cybersecurity support. They're not getting defense support. And that moves into a problem you have with third-party vendors as well. Sometimes a lot of these third-party vendors are not held to the same compliance and regulatory standards that the healthcare itself is, or they're not even going to be held liable for the same penalties that especially the US government is trying to implement on data breaches in the healthcare world. And this creates a big gap because your third-party vendors are not as concerned about the data breaches that could occur in your environment as you are. And the project and program development and management within the healthcare systems is also severely lacking, partially probably just because they don't have the money to pay the people who have the understanding to do so. Next slide, please. Or wait, never mind. Mine are different. Sorry. So the visibility of the bring your own device culture and the Internet of Things is very, very good with what Seceon is helping you do. It's giving you a whole lot of east-west, north-south traffic. It's giving you a much larger picture of these devices that aren't on your critical assets list. It's giving you information from devices that are connecting to any of your perimeter devices. And as a result, this is going to reduce a lot of the analyst fatigue that we see in this industry. It's going to lower overall cost, which is the main hindrance within the healthcare industry. They all see an importance for it, but it's just not there. They don't have the budgets. There's a lot of patient debt that healthcare systems are having to take on that's being passed to them from the insurance companies. And on top of all of that, where do we find the money to protect our networks? The Seceon OTM is going to help them with the stringent regulations and compliances. With their HIPAA report that you have, it goes through and shows you based on the types of alerts that you're seeing that you may need to have stricter policies or you need to enact something in this section of HIPAA compliance. in order to potentially make sure that you are in line with all of the stringent regulations and stuff the government's putting on you if you don't want to receive a really high fine, or if you don't want to be the subject of a data breach and then maybe not only be fined but sued for all the people's data and information you lost. There is an opportunity within this threat management system to create very granular policy violations. And while it's not going to stop traffic at the firewall or anything like that, it's going to allow the people with eyes on glass to see clearly that this actor has violated this policy we created, and it's going to help enforce that good security culture. It's also going to help with that 90-day time frame, because if someone forgets about it or if the landscape slightly changes, you can alter these policies so that it can keep reminding the SoC that people shouldn't be doing this, and then the SoC can then go ahead and inform the people within the right lanes to make sure that the nurses, doctors, and anybody else within the healthcare's network is actually doing the things they should be to help everybody stay better defended. Identifying items that are never seen is one of my favorite parts of this system. The behavioral analytics that are used for the baselining of the machine learning and the AI are almost too good at telling you when a new device is connected. A lot of times you have to come back and say, was this a new device? And your customer will be like, yes, it was. So without the warning, it looks like a legitimate alert. But in the healthcare system, you have so many people coming in with IoT devices, bring your own devices, and they're connecting to these large cloud infrastructures that is a much larger attack surface. The OTM also allows you to become more of an expert in one platform instead of 3, 4, 5. I've seen some SoCs with 6 or 7 different platforms that you needed to be well versed in just to understand and correlate alerts manually, and that's a huge aid that this allows for them. When it comes to threat hunting and a few things like that, the lack of talent and the ability to pay for talent is really damaging the healthcare industry. We're all in a field where it's expensive to pay for talent. It just really is. And talent becomes more and more expensive the more experience they get. And the experience compounds way faster than the pay rates do it a lot of times. It's why it's hard to retain SOC analysts, security engineers, even managers and directors. It's a little harder to contain. Next slide.
Okay, great. Thank you guys for a great discussion. We do have some questions coming in from the audience. We'll try to get to as many as possible in the limited time, and if we're not able to get to everything, we can definitely answer your questions offline. So the first question, I consider AI and ML to be one engine. Arun showed 2 separate engines. Why so?
This is Smit. I think I will take this. Thanks for the question. This is very interesting. If you think about it, people nowadays have multiple buzzwords, and AI and ML are just 2 of them. People refer to, in addition to artificial intelligence and machine learning, they also consider deep learning as a separate item as well. In the general sense, the ML is a term that is typically used to learn from the data that humanly is difficult or impossible to decipher at a very, very rapid or fast pace. In the context of AI sim, we refer to ML for a component that learns from all kinds of data that is fed into the system, and it does it all in near real time. Now, how does it differ from AI? So typically, AI is used to make a decision that humans will make, but rather do it more consistently and rapidly. In the context of AI sim, the AI engine that we use is responsible for decision making, and it's making those decisions that the SOC would otherwise make. The decisions are made within the context and situational awareness that the system has from the historical data that is gathered and the data that the machine learning has used. So you can refer to that as a SoC automation aided by ML. So that's the distinction for AI. I hope that answers the question.
Great, thank you, Smit. The second question is, being a solution provider, you perhaps talk to a number of healthcare providers. Why do you think some of these providers resist using platforms such as Seceon for their compliance needs?
I believe that's something that I would pick up. So this is Matt. Many times it'll come down to the budget, but for the most part, as I had mentioned earlier, healthcare is about patient care. So you really want to make sure that you're doing things that do not hinder what your organization is trying to do. And so sometimes tools that come in are going to be very, not just expensive cost-wise, but expensive process-wise, as well as maybe even just the training and other things that are asked of people in order to make something actually viable. So it's helpful to look for things that are as low touch as possible so that it can, one, more quickly be embedded into an environment, and two, be far more effective, because the more disruptive anything is that goes into a health environment, the more likely it's going to be rejected or get cast on the dust heap of some of those other systems that are just sitting around and languishing.
Great, thanks, Matt. I think this is something you can touch on too. This question says, a third of all breaches target healthcare companies. How are healthcare companies thinking about cybersecurity these days?
They're making sure that their insurance plan is up to date. Many times they sort of maybe sometimes feel that there isn't a whole lot they can do, and just be prepared for the storm. So it does seem overwhelming for many people, but when you have these larger groupings of like IDNs or ECOs and things, they're able to bring more resources to bear, and so they are trying to be more, I guess you would call it corporate or more mature in what they're trying to do to address the very real challenge that cybersecurity brings every day. And because they also can bring more resources to bear on certain things, they do feel that it's one of those challenges that they can start to unwind and take action on.
Great, thank you. The next question says, how are machine learning and AI technologies helping SoC analysts?
Hi, this is Michael again. So in traditional SIEMs, you're correlating a bunch of alerts that are pertaining to the same machine, same users together. Sucks a lot of analyst time. It also takes a lot of cognitive brain function from them. And the AI is going to reduce the amount of time it takes for an analyst to discern, was this a bring your own device potentially? Is this well outside of normal behavior analytics? Whereas a normal system, you're going to have to do that yourself, and it's very cognitively draining, and it increases the analyst fatigue. It contributes to your analyst being overworked. Whereas the AI system is helping to reduce all that. It's also reducing the cost of all of that analytical time and the amount of analysts you need performing such actions. Another thing is it's going to help reduce the way you're looking at your attack surface. So with the cloud and the Internet of Things, you have this super large attack surface is becoming harder and harder to defend every day, but it's becoming easier for attackers to attack. 10, 20 years ago, an attacker literally had to walk through a hospital and wait for maintenance people to open a door and be like, they have a Cisco switch in that room. They have this type of server, it looks like, behind that nurse's station. And they physically had to do the reconnaissance, and now they can do it from their base name, their lab, wherever they're sitting. And reducing the amount of attack surface an analyst has to look at is beneficial for everybody within the industry, honestly, in my personal opinion. You also have these large pools of cloud data that need to be exchanged from doctor to doctor, healthcare system to healthcare system, from your doctor to the expert they sent you for specific issues. And that, again, makes it a lot harder for analysts to defend and do their job or even protect prior to needing defense. And the AI SIEM is going to help these analysts discern what's happening at a much faster rate, reducing the time it takes for them to understand what they're looking at. And in turn is always reducing the overall analyst fatigue and the time that's needed for them to be eyes on glass, as opposed to maybe researching a problem or helping better defend a problem in the future. Sorry. The budget constraints are really then a huge problem after that, and reduction of cost is probably the best thing.
Thanks, Michael. We do have a few more questions here. Are there areas of disruption in a security operations center?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to begin with, the cost barrier for entry is changing, enabled by technology improvements such as Seceons. Without saying any specific brand name, I've witnessed deployments of like the more traditional SIEM solutions that can go up to $1 million, and I'm just talking about the necessary purchases and implementation, not even covering operational costs, which is extremely prohibited for your mid-market and SMBs. So the use of automation, machine learning, and big fast data platforms like Seceon does has created a solution that requires very little configuration. It learns actively and it improves the algorithm on the go. So it actually ends up bringing the implementation and operation costs down dramatically. So that type of technology, that type of solution enables a master MSSP like Highwire Networks Overwatch to tailor a security offering which is more focused on the actual real-time analysis and less management overhead. So that in turn enables end clients and partners to have turnkey access to their own SoC for a price which is more tailored to their needs. Basically no CapEx, just pure OpEx investment. So that in itself is business disruptive. We're talking about resolving the business and compliance problem for a market segment that has been pretty much ignored by classic players.
Thank you, Josue. It sounds like you can touch on this next question too. We've seen a lot of talk on automation and containment, yet there is a great resistance to security operations taking automated actions. Do you see a change coming there?
Well, resistance to change is always going to happen, right? In the case of security, it'll probably keep going like that because there's a required balance between security and usability. However, I do believe that that adopting these techniques is inevitable, as the cybersecurity industry has an ever-increasing skills gap. Just about a couple of years ago, it was 20,000 people less than what the market needed, and it's increasing exponentially. So it's a real concern. So in these scenarios, automated remediation, like what you're talking about, becomes way more attractive. So if you, like, the reason people has doubts is because they see this technology as a sort of double-edged sword. But however, it's all about how you apply it, right? And the need to have appropriate processes and criteria which are well-defined. So our clients see a great advantage to it, especially those with small IT departments. It's just a matter of combining great technology and expertise and use it in the best possible way.
Thank you. We have one final question for Seceon. Can Seceon be deployed in the cloud?
I'll take that question, Jenna. Thank you. AISIM, I think I mentioned that in my presentation. AISIM offers very flexible deployment options, and it is possible due to its underlying Docker container-based microservice architecture. And both components of the platform, APE as well as CCE, can be deployed on the same appliance. It can be in VM or public cloud, AWS, Azure instance. It also offers hybrid cloud infrastructure monitoring and protection with CCEs that can be deployed again on AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud. So short answer would be yes, and that's the long answer. So back to you, Jenna.
Thank you, Arun. Well, it looks like that concludes our webinar for today. Please stay tuned for the recorded session that will be emailed to you within 3 business days, and we hope to have you join us in future webinars. Thanks, everyone.